If you've ever felt like you're lugging around this invisible, incredibly heavy weight that you just can't quite explain, those repeating patterns of anxiety, the unspoken family rules, or maybe these massive emotional reactions that seem to just come out of nowhere, well, you are absolutely in the right place. In this explainer, we're going to take a really close look at that invisible baggage we all carry. Think of me as your guide, almost like a therapist sitting right there with you. We're going to explore these inherited family dynamics together, and we'll do it safely and carefully. So let's dive right in. We're going to use the metaphor of a suitcase. Picture a heavy, worn, vintage piece of luggage that was handed down to you, packed full long before you were even born.
It's a pretty profound question to ask yourself, isn't it? What is actually inside this suitcase you've been dragging around? For so many of us, simply carrying that heavy weight actually feels a lot easier than stopping to look inside. We avoid opening it up because, deep down, we kind of sense what might be waiting for us in there. Pain, old grief, a bunch of unanswered questions. But honestly, the mere fact that you're here right now engaging with this explainer tells me you've reached a turning point. The weight's just become way too heavy, hasn't it? You're probably noticing the same painful wounds just repeating in your life, popping up in different forms. And I really want to take a second to acknowledge the incredible bravery it takes to say, enough. To finally stop just carrying that burden, put the suitcase down, and actually decide to look inside.
Now, when we hear the word trauma, a lot of us instantly picture some massive, dramatic event, right? Like a war, a terrible accident, or a devastating loss. But generational trauma, it's usually a lot more subtle than that. It's almost like this hidden emotional inheritance tax. You see, sometimes what gets passed down isn't the dramatic historical event itself, it's actually the adaptation. It's the emotional rulebook. It's the specific survival strategy that your ancestors had to use just to get through that horrific event. The original hardship might be completely forgotten by your family today, but the survival response, that stays totally intact. And that response is exactly what gets packed right into the suitcase and handed directly to you.
So our absolutely crucial first step here is establishing a really firm boundary. We have to clearly separate the survival adaptations you inherited from your true, authentic personal identity. Because when you find yourself reacting with intense, unexplainable fear, or you completely shut down, or you fall into extreme people-pleasing, it is so easy to just throw your hands up and think, well, this is just who I am. I'm just broken. But I want you to hear this loud and clear. These patterns are not character flaws. They are historical survival tactics. They are simply things you carry, not who you are. Honestly, understanding that distinction is the bedrock of what we're doing today. It gives you the breathing room to start looking at your own behaviors with gentle curiosity rather than harsh judgment.
Okay, let's take a breath and move to the next phase. Let's unlatch the suitcase, and we are going to unpack it just item by item. We're not going to rush this, and we're definitely not going to pull everything out at once in a panic. We are going to take a really gentle, methodical pace. I am right here with you as we safely lift out the specific, invisible burdens that previous generations packed away. As we name each of these items, just kind of notice if it feels a little familiar in your own life.
The very first item we pull out is fear. Let's think about how this actually plays out in real life. Let's say your grandparents lived through extreme poverty during a depression. Their intense, gripping fear of not having enough was absolutely understandable, right? It was literally necessary for them to survive. But then, they raised their children with this constant, low-level worry about money, this ingrained need to always expect financial disaster. And eventually that gets handed right to you. You inherit the deep anxiety, that tight feeling in your chest, the fear of complete ruin, even if you have never personally experienced that kind of poverty. The original danger is totally gone, but the fear? It stayed perfectly packed in the suitcase. And by the way, this totally applies to inherited fears of rejection, failure, or abandonment too.
Digging a little deeper, the second item we find is silence. Look, many families survive terrible, unthinkable experiences, things like severe addiction, betrayal, or abuse, by simply refusing to ever talk about them. It just becomes the forbidden subject. Now, for the ancestor who first instituted this rule, silence genuinely felt protective. It was the only way they knew how to keep the family moving forward. But ultimately, over the generations, this protective rule just creates deep, lingering confusion. Kids grow up sensing the thick tension in the house. They feel the unspoken grief hanging in the air, but nobody ever explains a thing. So they learn a powerful emotional rule. We don't talk about difficult things. And that rule gets packed right into the suitcase, leaving you as an adult really struggling to voice your own pain or navigate any sort of difficult conversation.
Next up, we pull out hypervigilance. If your ancestors lived through sudden violence or severe prolonged instability, their nervous systems literally had to adapt.
They learn to stay constantly alert, always scanning the horizon, waiting for the next threat. And hey, that is a life-saving response if you're in a war zone or a highly abusive home. But the glitch happens when the danger finally ends, and that high alert setting just stays switched on. If you inherited this particular item, you probably find that you really struggle to just relax. You might walk around with this nagging, constant sense that the other shoe is about to drop at any second. And I just want to validate that for you right now. Your inability to trust peace, it absolutely does not mean you are broken. It just means your family's nervous system learned how to survive chaos and pass that biological alarm system straight down to you.
Our fourth item is people-pleasing. In certain family dynamics, a child's physical or emotional safety depended entirely on keeping the adults around them happy. Kids in those environments learn to become basically emotional ninjas. They get incredibly skilled at reading the room, anticipating moods, and morphing into whatever others need them to be just to keep the peace. But the heavy, heavy cost of constantly managing other people's emotions is abandoning your own needs. If you carry this item, I bet you know exactly what every single person in the room needs to feel comfortable. But if someone asks what you want, you draw a total blank. That pattern didn't start with you. It was a necessary, protective shield packed into the suitcase a long, long time ago.
And finally, we reach the very bottom of the suitcase. This is usually the most hidden item of all, almost always buried underneath the fear and the silence, unworthiness. These are those quiet, incredibly heavy internal messages, like I am just not enough, or my needs are a burden to everyone, or I have to be absolutely perfect if I want to be loved. What's so vital to understand here is that these beliefs are almost never explicitly taught. Nobody sits you down and teaches you this. They are absorbed. They seep in through emotional distance, neglect, or just environments where sheer survival literally left no extra room for emotional connection. Over time, these feelings of unworthiness kind of disguise themselves as your core identity. But listen to me, they are not undeniable facts about who you are. They are simply absorbed adaptations. And the beautiful thing about adaptations, they can be changed.
Okay, take a nice, deep breath. We've looked at all the really heavy, difficult items, and now I want to give you a moment for an emotional sigh of relief, because we're going to shift our focus. As we explore the very bottom corners of this family suitcase, we actually realize something incredible. Packed right in there alongside the trauma, the fear, and the unworthiness are these beautiful, shining counterweights. Because it turns out, not everything inside this suitcase is painful.
Tucked right alongside all those heavy burdens are your inherited strengths. We're talking resilience, creativity, humor, compassion, loyalty, generosity. Think about it. The same ancestors who survived through fear and silence, they also had to be incredibly, stunningly resilient to make it through. They might have used brilliant, dark humor to survive the hardest days. They may have been fiercely loyal to their loved ones. These remarkable, beautiful gifts are also your inheritance, and this is exactly why the ultimate goal of healing isn't to just drag this suitcase out to the curb and set the whole thing on fire. You definitely don't want to throw away your deep compassion or your brilliant creativity just because they happen to share a space with hypervigilance.
And that brings us to a really critical moment, creating your healing plan. Now that you've actually seen the contents, you might be feeling a bit overwhelmed. You might be recognizing family dynamics you've literally never had a name for before, and you might be feeling sadness, anger, or honestly, maybe just profound relief. Very often, this is the exact moment where people are tempted to just snap the suitcase shut, lock it, and walk away. Because once you see a pattern, you really can't unsee it. But please, don't close it now. You opened it in the first place because you were exhausted from watching the same painful cycles repeat. And I want to encourage you, there is a structured, entirely doable way forward from here.
Let's walk through a very gentle, 3-step healing plan together. Step 1. Examine the contents carefully. Call them what they are. Name the inherited fears, the silence, and yes, name the strengths too. Step 2. Keep what serves you. Actively claim your resilience, your humor, your deep empathy. And step 3. Release what no longer serves you. This is the moment you actively draw the line between your inheritance and your personal identity. You can literally say out loud, you know what? This anxiety belonged to my grandfather. It kept him safe back then, but I do not need it anymore. I'm giving it back. Just because a heavy burden was handed to you does not mean it belongs to you forever.
I want you to take just a quiet moment and really ask yourself, what cycle are you absolutely most determined not to repeat? Is it that cycle of silence? Is it the cycle of people-pleasing until you're completely exhausted? Maybe it's the cycle of unspoken, lingering fear. Taking the time to answer this specific question helps you build a definitive, incredibly powerful boundary between the pain of your family's past and the wide-open, amazing possibilities of your future.
Your answer to this is basically the compass that's going to guide your entire personal healing plan.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this really beautiful thought. Awareness is not the end of the journey. It is the doorway. Please be so incredibly gentle with yourself today. If some strong emotions have bubbled up, you are not imagining things, and you are definitely not betraying your family just by acknowledging the heavy things that packed away. You are simply becoming aware. And that awareness, that is the courageous first step right through the doorway. Every single step you take from here creates the possibility of a completely different future. So, as we close our time together, I'll leave you with this to ponder. Now that you've unpacked the past, what will you choose to pack in your suitcase for the next generation?